Hello and welcome to AMA Puget Sound's Coffee Talk series on YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, and wherever else you're finding us. We are so happy to be here with you. And today we've got a special guest, Amy Rosenberg, and we're going to be talking about some great stuff related to thought leadership.
I kind of threw you for a loop. That's why you're doing that. I can explain, but no, I want to come in and direct the show, right? Even though it's your
You're
show.
the professional.
No, let's change this. No, sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's all good. It's all good. I'm very happy that you're here because yes, you also host a podcast, which I want to learn a little more about. So I get to learn from you as somebody who's doing this kind of professional. Well, you are doing it professionally, whereas we're doing this as a nonprofit volunteer kind of thing and just bringing content to everybody. So I love that we are sharing information. It's awesome. How are you today?
Good. Thanks for having me. I'm doing well, a little nervous because I'm up in a different area of my house that is super hot. And it's like I close the windows because I can hear construction. And I'm like, a micromanager. I can't just let things go. So I have to work all that stuff in. But yeah, I'm good. How are you?
I'm very well, very hot as well. We were sharing before the show. Obviously, I'm outside Seattle, and you are in Portland, so we're part of the West Coast. It's hot.
Yeah,
it's very hot.
Yeah, and then of course you're working from home, and you have the kids at home, and I have teenagers, so I'm saying be quiet and don't use the internet because it will affect the bandwidth or whatever. And if they're giving me this look like, are you crazy? It's like they can't imagine not using the internet. It's like, I think you'll live for half an hour.
Yeah. My kids are 12 and they are happy to play with Legos. So.
Oh, well, I kind of miss those days except for stepping on the Legos and hurting my feet.
Yep, absolutely. Yep, you have to get the slippers.
Yeah.
So this is wonderful. I love these conversations. And I want to really talk to you more about thought leadership because this is what you know, and I want to learn from you because I don't consider myself a thought leader. I consider myself part of the audience, kind of just kind of being that point of contact. So I would love to learn more about thought leadership. And my first question to you then is, where should a company even start? Oh no, sorry, that's not the question I want to ask. Disregard.
Well, that's good because I wasn't going to answer it.
Okay. We're going to strike those. We are on the fly. We're live. This is great. I love it. But talking about thought leaders, why is it essential? Why do organizations and companies need to have a thought leader in their corner?
Okay. I mean, there's a lot of reasons, but I kind of too many reasons. I could take the whole half hour talking about it. But I'm going to kind of back up and talk a little bit from the PR perspective. Mm-hmm. So we're a PR firm, right? Mm-hmm. But PR is a part of all marketing. So I know this is AMA. But a lot of times with PR, I mean, there's always that credibility factor. It used to be that PR was so credible because, you get in the news and that's great, right? Mm-hmm. Well, so now with Fox News and all the and fake news, right? You're kind of thinking, oh, is anything I'm doing helping? I mean, you know what I mean? And so of course it is because, we do a lot of B2B and getting in all the other little publications like verticals and business journals helps. But you still have to wonder because what if you have a consumer account and you do want to get on Fox or whatever? So here's the thing. Whenever the Edelman study comes out, the Edelman public relations study or trust barometer. Yep. So I pour over that. And the last 2 years have talked about thought leadership, actually. Yes. Well, I call it thought leadership. They've been talking about how, the trust in regular media is going down. But what is going up is trust in businesses, bigger businesses. And
interesting.
What's interesting is that it's trust in thought leaders of the business. So, and what employees trust the most is information coming from their executive leaders, which would be internal newsletters, right? Or whatever, So what we do from a PR standpoint is there's internal comms, which is PR, which, we can work on social, all that, and internal newsletters. But from an external PR point of view, we're really just focusing now on PRing the thought leader rather than the company or maybe even the mission, because that all gets intertwined into the thought leadership. And so our thought is that if we have an article placed by the CEO of a reputable company, maybe that is more believable than the press writing it. Now, it's a very unique, different way to think about it because everybody in our industry kind of used to think that the press was so credible. But so we're kind of flipping it on its head, but we're still using the press to get our thought leaders in there. And that also helps. Just getting any kind of press coverage online helps with SEO, search engine optimization. So PR essentially is kind of like your organic SEO ninjas now. But we just use the thought leaders. And then, but we're always linking back to the company. And so the other reason, so that's just from a PR standpoint, just kind of set it up. But the other reason to do thought leadership, especially in this hiring market, is for retention and recruiting. So that's a huge thing. And so we've always kind of done that with PR. We just called it PR. But like when we're working with a client, we are working directly with their marketing team, kind of like partners, and talking about like, well, who, you know, with leadership, who do we want to highlight? Who's doing a really good job? Who do we want to keep? Right. Who is so awesome we're afraid to lose. So then what we do is we do some thought leadership with them. So we want them because obviously they're awesome. So they can tell us a lot of cool things. And what we do with the cool things they tell us is get it on in the media, or we'll write blog posts on their behalf and then pitch those out to press or not. Some of our blog posts we think are honestly so great that we don't necessarily want to send them to press. We want to have our own press hub on our client's website. Anyway, that was a lot. So
that's really a lot of good stuff. And I was like, okay, what can I grasp at? Oh my gosh, this is so great. Because I mean, what it sounds like, what it sounds like really is the thought leader is, because the press release, that just seems like it's black and white, it's facts, it is what it is. Whereas you bring in the thought leader, you're bringing in that human aspect. You're bringing in a person, you're putting a name with a face, or a face with a company, or something like that. And especially when you are looking, like you said, who can we highlight? It's a who, it's not a what. You're highlighting the people in the company rather than the products. And I would love
we're also and we're also super lucky that we just have the type of clients that want to be inclusive and highlight new people in their organization, not always the same old, let's just say white men, even though they are involved and they're, the people that are sometimes still, running the organizations. We are just super lucky that we happen to have really good allies through our leadership at our companies, and they are empowering their staff, and they're sick of being in the spotlight. They're ready to just kind of take the back step and let other people do that work. And then that gives them a lot of, confidence in their work and empowers them to like care about their job and almost like act like entrepreneurs within the organization.
Sure. Wow, that's a lot. But I want to learn more. So when you're creating a program for thought leadership, what are some best practices? What are some things that you should be adding to that just automatically?
Well, so what we kind of look at it like a content plan, so we look at everything on a monthly basis, and then we kind of layer it in depending on bandwidth of either our budget or the client's bandwidth. I mean, they might not have a lot of time to do a lot, but we always start with like a hallmark piece of content per month on a topic, and that is on our client's website, and it lives there, and it's written by the thought leader. And so what we do is we kind of pick out what our topics are and align them with various audiences that we want to reach. And so we'll kind of pick the audiences first because, with a lot of B2B, we've got a lot of verticals, and we'll try and put like a percentage based on each audience of how much focus we want to spend. And then in our plan, we'll actually have the audiences listed out so that we can kind of weed out if we're focusing too much on one audience. So we start with that, right? And then we layer in extra things. So like what the extra things would be PR. So because you've got your blog, but that's not necessarily like outgoing PR. So with the PR, if it's just kind of like a one-off press release, we just use press releases for like announcements. And
Mm-hmm.
like, sure, my thought leader might be quoted in there, but that's not too big of a deal, like not a big campaign. So we might even just do like quarterly releases, if that.
Oh,
But so then that's just kind of like a little thing in there in the calendar. And then, but our bigger thing is if we can kind of take what we do with the blogs is take them and kind of create a pitch for the
no.
press, say, hey, would you like a customized version of this article or of this blog, but it's customized for you. So then we'll pitch that out. And then we might change the order of what topic we're focusing on and whom we're focusing on, meaning the
Sure.
thought leader, based on what's going on, like in the news or in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And in the world, what's going on in the world, I mean, trade shows. So a lot of us are doing trade and vertical, so whatever shows that our clients are going to be at. And so we will, if it's a new client and we haven't built up their thought leadership yet, we cannot pitch them for speaking engagements yet. I mean, we can
Sure.
try, but it might not work. So then that's fine. So what we do is we just know you're going to be there, and we're going to do some blogs around that to try and get you comfortable around the topic of the trade show, so that when you get there, and maybe blogs and social, so that when you get there, people are associating you, they know maybe you're there, they're associating you with that topic that you're talking about. And then also with trade shows, we might be able to set up press interviews for our clients. And we do that by grabbing the press list from the other PR person on the other side of the trade show and set up little meet and greets. And that's kind of first step to thought leadership, where it's super casual, low key, like you're just networking as you normally do when you go to trade shows, but you're just
Yeah.
networking with the press. And so then where our relationships are built, and then the next year, maybe we'll actually have something to announce
Mm-hmm.
around the show. And so, yeah, it's a combo of all those things.
Sure, sure. And I mean, it sounds a lot less scary than you'd think of like, I mean, nobody like, I can't imagine somebody just sets out and like, I'm going to be a thought leader.
Yeah.
You become an expert in something or you've got the charisma, that kind of stuff. So what kind of, I want to know like what goes into, I don't want to say perfect because that doesn't exist, but what goes into a really great thought leader? What are some characteristics?
That's an awesome question. And because there's two types of thought leaders, there's the one that you always think of, which has the charisma that actually might be the CEO.
Mm-hmm.
But that's done. We're done with that. Like a lot of our CEOs are over it, right? Like I was saying, it doesn't, and especially now we're in the age of like celebrating the geeks, right? So we're not, so yeah, there you go. So it's cool. Like, so, we love numbers and stats. A lot of people do. Geeks and press, by the way, loves that. And then it's great for social too. So what we do is, and some clients, even a CEO might not be comfortable doing speaking. That's totally fine. We honor that and say, you're fine. You don't need to do that. Maybe you don't want to spend time doing it and the money traveling. So we're just going to use the internet and we're going to use the written form. Or we're going to warm up with podcasts, actually. That's a good way to practice. Sorry, but I mean, this is live. This is more of some other podcasts are more like easier to do with if you're shy. But so with the more, we look at the more data kind of savvy people, and we just use a lot of their data, and we create the posts on their behalf. So it's not hard. So well, for them. Maybe it's hard for us, but all we do is we just interview them or talk to them, write down everything they say, and then that turns into something, whether it's a post or social copy or whatever. The one thing we would like our thought leaders to do is to try and be active on LinkedIn, because if they're not, it's hard for us to build their credibility. It's hard for us to create like content that actually has an impact, because if you don't have followers, you're not no I don't want to say what's the point, because you have to start somewhere, but so it's really the people that you wouldn't think that, and that's our job to bring them out. You know what I mean? Like it's not, they don't have to be, an extrovert even.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as long as they're coached and somebody else is kind of handling the scary bits, it's not so bad. But yeah, how many of those thought leaders, like how big is their team? Do you think? Now I'm just throwing questions
Well,
at
do
you.
you mean, no, that's fine.
Like,
Do you mean like, because so what we do is pick a thought leader per department. So it
okay,
obviously
okay,
depends on the company, but per department. And so
mm-hmm.
then I don't know how big each team is, because also our clients are very varied in terms of how big they are, but they're mostly like small to medium sized businesses. So if they're more on the bigger side, like medium for us, would be a thought leader per team,
Oh,
or department. I'm sorry, right? And so like let's say we have an HR team.
yeah.
We're actually going to thought leadership that maybe the head of HR, even if we're not in HR, because that helps with recruiting
Mm-hmm.
and retention, because our thought leadership will focus on culture for that. So that one we're going to do a little there. Then we're going to think, okay, wait, what's our product? We're going to do a little thought leadership around that with who
Mm-hmm.
we're selling to. And a lot of clients are trying to sell to different segments. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe we'll pick one person per segment, and then they're not as overwhelmed. And then they're really becoming the niche thought leader around that segment.
Mm-hmm. Right, absolutely. And one other question about like thought leaders, because I know this has come up and I've heard other people say it like, oh, a thought leader is just somebody who brags about themselves. And that's probably not even somebody who's considered a thought leader. And when we say thought leader, you are talking to somebody who is an expert in their field, their expertise, and they are talking about that specific industry or topic, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm very glad you asked that, because I want to clarify,
Thank you.
because
Awesome.
you don't always need to know anything. You
Yeah.
can be a thought leader and share other people's opinions, and all you're doing, or info. Opinions are kind of tricky. Info, like like what
Yeah.
if we don't have, so because sharing other people's info is
Mhm.
helpful to that. You are, as a thought leader, empowering someone else. So that's also kind of a cool way to be like inclusive, or
Mhm.
to lift somebody up. If you're worried, about that you've been in the spotlight too much, you can lift someone up through your spotlight, which is allyship.
Mhm.
And so anyway, so it can be that, but then also it can just be, a multiple, basically you're just helping people. It's, a lot of people on this, watching this, might have thought of, have already done a lot of content, and, and social, and you say, well, you need to help someone, give them what they want with the social. We don't want to brag. It's the same with thought leadership. No one, and actually, even if I was paying for placement, which we do
Yeah.
sometimes, I can't brag, because nobody will look at it. There's no point. So
Yeah.
it has to be good. So even a blog, it's not about like I'm so great, or we're so great, or
Yeah.
she's so great. It's about like, this is the issue. Here's what's going on. Here's the data or the research we found. And then maybe here's how we approach it, or maybe here's what we don't know about it, and what are
Mhm.
your thoughts. And we're opening up the dialogue, which is thought leadership, possibly.
Right, right. And that's expanding your community.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, and I was going to say, if you wanted, the other thing we were going to talk about was community relations, and I don't know, but those are so kind of different. I mean, you
Mm-hmm.
could tie it together, but I feel like I don't have enough time to do that. But if you had questions on community relations, we could talk about that too.
Well, let's keep talking about thought leadership. I'm having
Okay.
fun. Yeah. So when you are um, kind of looking around your organization, you're like, okay, we need to pick a thought leader. Like, how do you identify somebody that would be a good person to do that to, and how do you approach them? How do you say, we want to make you a thought leader? Like, how do you approach them so it's not scary to that person?
Oh, good question. Well, so there's kind of two questions there. So first, we are an external firm, so I don't have a lot of power, but sometimes I can use my brain and see, oh, that person might be good, and I can tell you about that, and it might not be what you expect, actually. But it's more about the client, just us kind of picking our topics, and then it's basically like, here's our topics, who's the spokesperson on it? That's
Gotcha.
it. like you have to think of it like that. But and it's fine if your spokesperson's the CEO. That's totally fine. It's just not always our approach. But because I have shy clients. That's like I really do. And I have very modest clients that just are just like I'm running this whole thing, but like I would rather Sally speak for me because she's better at it or something or whatever. So but it can be the top person. And that might be why they're at the top, because they're good at it.
Sure.
Or we just think about who's the spokesperson, and it's really just the people that know their shit. And it's just who and they know. But then we might know, I might know, or we might know by working with someone who is like speaking up in meetings, but not in a bossy way, saying, I know about this. And it's not like, I know how to market this, because like, okay, I know how to do that too. Maybe not. But they're talking about their industry. And it's like, I might not know about their industry, but what they're saying is valid. And so I can pull that. Now, another unique way to do it that we've done is I have a steel company as a client, right? Now we're doing some, upgrades to the steel company. And we have this amazing woman engineer working, but she's not in-house. She's with the firm, but she's awesome. And I don't necessarily have the engineer that I want, to highlight per se at the steel company, nor do they want to be highlighted. So they're just more than happy to let this woman be in the spotlight, and she's more than happy, and her company's happy to oblige. And so it's like to kind of show, there's no secret. She's with an external party, but, we are helping the steel company with these initiatives that will then help other people. And here's the answers to any questions you might have. And then, or it could be what I call a fluff piece, kind of being like, oh, it's Earth Day, let's celebrate. But we're going to celebrate in a real way. And we're going to highlight the woman engineer that is helping us, and not even highlight ourselves. Does that, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
We're just using our platforms to highlight someone else.
Because that in itself is marketing. It really is. And I've definitely in past campaigns have used the human side, the focus on the humans piece to it, and that draws in, that because you're not, it's finally like you see a post like, oh, you're not selling to me directly. Like, I know back in my head you are selling to me, but you're giving me a story. You're giving me something to eat up as in content. So I like that because it solves many problems when you just highlight your people.
And I guess, and I will say though, over the last few years, it hasn't been as scary for people because it's there's no events. So maybe that's also why this has been a cool way for our leaders to see how somebody else can do, either in the written or podcast form or webinars. And so then anyway, so it's just not as scary, and people are kind of like, oh, we're just having fun here. And so whenever I do anything, because you asked about how do you approach people with anything, PR or thought leadership, everything is very casual. It's like, we're just having fun. Meaning, so I've done a lot of live TV, but like organizing it, right, on the back end. And whoever's my interview is just like, oh, we're just having fun. This is casual. Because if I come in and all nervous and tense, and they're going to be nervous. So with the thought leaders, I kind of approach it that way. As kind of like, oh, would you be interested? And like totally light. And then but my client sometimes approaches them, and I might kind of direct how they approach them by saying like, oh, she just wants to talk to you. Because instead we've accidentally called it an interview. Like, oh, they want to interview about this. And it's like, then they're confused. They're like, what, are you with the press? Like, where is this going? It's like, I don't know. We call it an interview internally, but that's like the wrong way to do it. It's just, and I just think the more you talk to people, the better. So if you're in-house, that's the thing, is you want to just listen to people. And then, because if you're marketing in-house and whoever's just spouting out really good information, that's your thought leadership stuff. So you just want to try and be around those people, get to know them, and capture it, because you have to capture it.
Uh-oh. I think you may have frozen, Amy. This is
I
what
think,
happened.
yeah. I think you went away.
There we go.
So you
All right.
just want to capture it. You just want to capture it to then do something with it. So you just have to listen to people and just have your ear to the ground. And it might just be the unexpected person. But you might have politics to deal with in your organization, that it has to be a layered approach, that, oh, this person can only speak. And it's like, okay, fine. But maybe we can start somewhere. We can start with a different kind of person on blogging or podcast interviews.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, for somebody who, they've been approached and they are not sure if they want to be put, kind of thrust into that spotlight, how do you, with being respectful, but that they're going to say yes, but how do you get them to yes? And, being respectful if they really don't want to do it, obviously. But how do you kind of get them over the edge of like, no, 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 you're going to be great.
Oh, that's a good question too. But because I did forget to say, we do respect what people want. I mean, some people are too busy, and it's like, I get it. Like, it's totally fine. But some people are just really wanting to help us, and they like what they do. And so after they get comfortable and get to know us, they're fine with it. But some people aren't, and then we just move on.
Right.
But what we do is we just try and it's basically, I don't really care about getting you in the spotlight. I want your brain, if that
Yeah.
makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
So we can just recognize, and other people can, who has the good brain, and you just talk to me. And
Mm-hmm.
then it is a lot of written content, obviously. And so we'll just put that into something. And then it's not hard. We'll put your name on it or not. If you want some, because that's ghostwriting, right?
Yeah.
So if we need to highlight somebody else, which is we're very used to that in marketing. We highlight the leaders. If it has to be that way, that's totally fine. But then the person we're leaning on is the one that might feel more engaged, and the pat on the back. And but you're right. I mean, sometimes they just need that pat, like encouragement, and saying like, oh no, you're fine. And we just do that throughout our conversations. Like, I know I'm talking a lot, but like, I'm being interviewed, but we tried not to talk a lot and
Mm-hmm.
just draw out the information. And then whenever we get it, we're saying, oh, that's really good. Oh, that's great. Oh, what's and kind of building their confidence.
Mm-hmm.
Because the way we're working is we're trying to highlight a lot of newer people for inclusivity, of not necessarily DEI, but partially DEI, but just for like lifting people up.
Yeah.
And so they do need a little bit of that
Mm-hmm.
encouragement.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Especially if it's new concept to them or just, yeah, shy. People are shy. It happens. Or, yeah, maybe this grand idea of like, no, you're going to be on a stage in front of 400 people.
Yeah,
No.
I mean, I know I keep talking about podcasts, and I have one, so not to say podcasts are kind of junky or anything. It's just very good to downplay it and say we're going to use this as practice. So I mean, it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
Like so you can just get comfortable. It's a very good medium for getting comfortable and practicing. And if they hate it or they're too busy, then we just move on, and that's fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
Everything's
there's plenty of other people, so.
exactly. Exactly. And you've mentioned podcasts. Do you want to quick tell us about your podcast as well as Veracity?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So the podcast is called PR Talk. It's sponsored by the PRSA of Oregon. I've had it for almost 5 years, and we interview thought leaders, not just I started doing media, and I've kind of moved on to interviewing all kinds of thought leaders. So like we had Chris Penn on talking about data in PR. And like next week, I'm interviewing somebody to talk about work-life balance and burnout. So it's just all over the place, but like, cool. Hopefully. And then our company is called Veracity, and we are, a traditional marketing firm that also works online. I'm sorry, traditional PR that works online. Like, because there's always the SEO slant, because if I'm not getting anything online, I don't know what the point is of any of the work because of SEO. So there's that. And then I also wrote A Modern Guide to Public Relations, which is a book that is really kind of 101 for people who want to do PR, like in the industry or in-house. And I've done a lot of videos because I was trying to explain it. And my partner said, just do like 1 or 2 videos about the book. And I did 60 because it was because that's just how I roll. No, because I was like, oh, I could explain each portion of the book. So it kind of like works together because I can, so it's kind of like a digital classroom on my website.
Right. That's so great because I love the supplemental piece to it as well as, well, I mean, the replay for you, which is great and people get the book, but that's so genius because you're able to expand even further that you wouldn't have been able to in the book because some things you can't just write it. You have to say it because there's context and there's something behind it. So that's so great. That's awesome.
And I'll let you go. I guess the last thing is it's veracityagency.com, or if you can't remember that, prtalk.co, but they all go to the same place.
Perfect. And we'll have that all linked below. Is there anything you want the audience to know or anything you want to recap before we close out?
Oh, good question. I guess, just you got to, again, kind of start somewhere. And I think how the best way to do it is through organization, like mapping out your plan. And then, your plan can always change. But I think the plan of what you're going to do, and you don't even have to have the thought leaders. It's just like, what the topic is, right? That you need to highlight. Then you just ask, who would be good to talk about this? Let's think out of the box. And I'm not looking for the most popular girl in school type person. I'm looking for the, person that knows, that can answer the questions about it, that can give me a lot of info about it. I might not even know the questions to ask. So I need someone to like direct me.
That's really, really helpful. Thank you so much, Amy, for your time today and everything you've shared. I know we could keep going. We really, really could easily. Like I said, we'll have all of your links and everything you're promoting it down below, including your podcast. I just want a quick shout out. We have our own conference coming up in less than a month called Market Mix at Bell Harbor in Seattle. So if you're going to be in Seattle, come see us. We're actually going to be doing an episode of Coffee Talk live during that conference, which I've linked information below. Thank you all for watching and for supporting this channel. If you like this episode, please like and subscribe. And Amy, again, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it too. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And stay cool and stay hydrated.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.